All right, good evening once again to all of you. Wonderful book this. I've actually gone through the poetry book, and how does it feel being here, Saranya? How does it feel being here? I mean, you're a teacher, you're a trainer, you're a Bharatanatyam dancer and all of that, and yet you're able to find time to write this book. Right? How does it feel?
I'm all of that, I think, because I write, and it feels home. It feels so much home because every face that is here, including the strange ones, are people who've contributed to this book, its experiences. Not just the experiences in the book, but experiences that make me as a person. And I guess that's why it feels like home. There were the jitters, there were the, oh my god, it's my first book feelings. But the minute I entered this place and I saw these faces, faces that were exclusively here because of the immense love that they have for me, I felt not just thankful and grateful, I felt alive. I felt home. Thank you so much for being here.
Did you ever imagine a time when you'd actually be here? Did you imagine? I mean, all of us dream of winning the Wimbledon, all of us dream of getting the Olympic medal, all of us dream of publishing our first book. Did you have a dream also?
In fact, yes. I dreamt that I would write, always. I dreamt that one day I would be able to write something that I can dedicate to the most important person in my life. I dreamt that one day I would be able to express my feelings without really having to think twice about those expressions. I dreamt that one day I would be able to shout out loud from the top of the world one belief that I had, that living is the only way to live. And I think it is that thought, it is that belief in spontaneity, that belief in being honest to what I felt, what I thought, and that strength that I drew from the people around me that has made that dream come true today. Yes, there was a dream, and I am living the dream today.
Wonderful. Matea Harvey is a young American contemporary poet, and she has this to say: well-written poems can be deadly if they're just good from a craft point of view. Great poems are unpredictable, imaginative, and a bit alarming, like a consortium of octopuses escaping through a 1-inch hole. Matea Harvey said that. You know, it's a wonderful way of describing what are well-written poems, and even better way to describe those great poems, really. Does the rain cry? Do her tears dry? Does she readily let go of her sky? Wow. In her wind to drench a thing to go by, is her wind to drench a thing to go by, or to please him, does she simply lie? Very poignant, very intense, very beautiful. Is the rain a woman in disguise? Saranya.
Jack Derrida once says that once a poet or an author writes something, he is dead. The author is dead. The death of the author is something that he talks about. And I think the whimsical rain is not just a woman, it's just everybody without the courage to speak. It's everybody who's trying to people please. It's everybody who's trying to play a role, conform, get into a mode that is acceptable to society, to their people. But then ultimately it's a choice, you see. It's a choice that they make. It's a choice that they make because it's convenient. A choice that they make because it's comfortable. They don't have to get out of their comfort zone. And ultimately, and she falls to play many roles. Just the way we act to play many roles.
So beautifully written, because when I read it first, and it's the first poem in the book itself, when I read it first, I looked at the thunder first. It's like the rain which actually brings the thunder, or thunder that actually brings rain. Here was a poem that actually thundered along right through. And it's a lovely metaphor actually, rain as a woman. Most of the poems seem to be very poignant and very intense. Mr. Belawadi, this particular poem asks a lot of questions actually. If you look at it deeply, profoundly, it asks you a lot of questions. And the answer says, hey, let me be. It's such a simple answer, let me be. Now, in your films, in your plays, do you also ask such questions? Whether it's a script that you write, or do your thoughts flow very freely, no questions asked, nothing at all, and you just write?
I don't think anybody has the luxury to be free to start with. There is an introduction in the book where Saranya says that she asks her niece or somebody, niece says, I love you, and she's a 6-year-old girl, and she asks her, why do you love me? And she says, because I love you. I'll give you a parallel from in the opening scene of Merchant of Venice. The very first lines that Antonio speaks, he says, I'm sad, and I'm wearied of being sad. He's tired of being sad, but he's sad. And he tells his friends that he's rich, his ships are very strong and fleet and fast, there's no problem with the ships. The ships will come in and he'll be wealthier than before. Everything's good, but he's sad. So his friends try to reason why he could be sad, and he finishes up saying, this is the role I have to play in my life, to be sad, he says. So the reason for being sad is sadness, like this is see why I say that is, why do we write or paint? Nobody asks us, we're not making a product for the market. Why are we like this? We are like that because we want to say something, which is why a first set of poems that you choose to publish, they may not be the first set of poems you've written, or the first set of paintings that you choose to show, or the first play, or the first film, or the first script, the first that you want to go out and say who I am, is never free. It is always a cry seeking freedom, So that's
Wow. Therefore, when you have this cry, which actually seeks freedom, is there a connection between the speaking voice and the written voice?
That's curious you say, because increasingly when Indians are writing poetry in English, they begin to abandon all the tropes and the structures and the formulae that was given to us in our stultifying, horrifying English classrooms as we grew up. Because, see, the previous poem, for instance, Hugs, is a ghazal. We grew up listening to ghazals, and it's a ghazal. So that's how we begin to write now.
Actually sing it.
The rhythms are actually Indian, although the language is English, and that is one way of owning the language, and appropriating it for ourselves. It's become Indian today, the English language.
Just about going away from poetry and coming to your work, since you're an eminent playwright and director, writer, and actor too. After Stumble was written and directed by you in 2003. We all know that you actually do a lot of plays and television serials and films in Kannada. How come after Stumble you did not do any English film after
And
that?
the answer is very easy. My wife left me for some time. I sold my flat and my car, and I was completely broke. And I dealt with ideas that I must do away with myself because I lost so much money doing it. But it's okay, it went. But I kept myself. See, theatre saved my life because I always keep doing plays, and that's how. See, this is a very strange world for me. I don't know anybody here, but I actually come for these things because somebody from your hometown has the courage to do this, to write poetry, and would like to publish it and show it to people. And I think I want to be a part of that. That's because I know what it is.
Will this inspire you to write a poem yourself? Have you written poems before?
See, I'm not a writer. I don't come from a literary background. Writing for cinema or writing for television is not literature. It is actually filmmaking. See, we don't write description. We actually write action. It's completely different from literature. So, but I think I want to be a writer. But I want to be a writer not writing itself because I want to say something. So I feel sometimes it doesn't qualify me to be a writer, but let us see,
Are those questions to discover something that you've been missing, or is it just a very free flow of thoughts?
Isn't any poem a rhetoric? It doesn't really expect an answer. Because if everything could be answered by a poem, then we would all be writing quite a bit, right? So it's a rhetoric, yes. I don't expect an answer because I think the day I get the answer, I would cease to live. You live because you're searching, you live because you're seeking, you live, you're alive, you exist because you're looking for something, right? And the day you think you've received everything that you were looking for, I don't see why you're going to wait for tomorrow. Yeah, so this search is constant, and no, I don't expect answers, but yes, it would thrill me absolutely if somebody has the same questions. And from what I see, most of us do. From what I've heard, most of us do. And that's a consolation that you're not alone, that you're not the only person who's questioning these things, that you're not the only person who's troubled by these things. And there are a lot of other people who think that these questions need to be asked whether or not you get an answer.
When you ask those questions, when did you first start writing plays and scripts and all of that? When did you first start writing, and why poetry?
Do you believe if I say it was my maths class?
I'm not surprised because I used to hate maths myself.
It was my maths class, and I couldn't get myself to concentrate at all. Because I didn't believe in numbers right from the time I was a kid. Probably because I didn't know numbers as well, but I didn't believe in them. Let's just say that. It sounds more sophisticated to say that, right? So it was a maths class, and I had excellent maths teachers. I mean, full credits to them, excellent maths teachers. But I somehow couldn't get myself to love the subject at all. So there was this best friend of mine in class, my window. I used to always sit next to that window. And my maths class would invariably be spent looking outside that window. And what can a wandering mind do but to pretend that she's actually writing something? When the teacher is trying to say something in the board, of course, it all came back to me in full measure when I was a teacher, but I guess it's okay, circle of life happens. But yes, so empty mind, nothing to do, looking outside the window, such beautiful sights. All I want to do is go out and have fun and swing by the birds. And so there used to be this tamarind tree which was there right behind school. I studied in a very humble school which produced some really great people. Most of them who did not concentrate in a maths class. So yeah, so I think that's when it started, and I think I was 12. I think I was 11 or 12. Appa remembers the time I wrote the first poem, something about the moon playing hide and seek and the moon coming out and going in. Easiest thing for a child to write about is the moon, because the moon will not come down and hold you by the collar and say, how can you do this to me? So I guess that's when it started.
Do you sit and think of every word that you write, every verse that you're going to write, or is it just a complete free flow of thoughts that this lets you do?
You asked me if I dreamt about this day. I forgot to mention at that point. Yes, I dreamt about this day. The first time I came here, it was about 13 years ago, where we had a 10 years ago, where we had a poetry reading session that was organized at Oxford Bookstore Leela. And I was in college, I think I was in second PUC, first PUC something, and we were invited to. So I was extremely thrilled because it was my first reading, and I had to read out a poem. I wrote something about neighbors and, I had used a particular word called Joe in the poem. And one of the panelists woke up and said, "You're a fake," and it shook me up. It shook me up because I somehow believed that I was anything but fake, in everything I did. So this shook me up when she said that. And then she reminded me saying that you write only when you write like the way that Keats says. He says that verse should fall to the soul like dew to the petal flower. It should come as naturally. It should come as free-flowing. When she said that, I re-examined what I had written. And I told myself, no, what I wrote was not fake. Probably what I wrote was rehearsed. That particular day I stopped waiting for words. When they come, they come. I don't hurry them.
Do you see a beginning or an end when you write? Or is it, again, you just let it flow? What would you, Prakash, do? When you write your plays, when you write your scripts, do you see a beginning and an end? Or is it just to flow? I've got a lovely idea.
Jean-Paul Sartre, in an essay called What is Art? A painting student goes to his teacher and says, "Sir, when is my painting finished?" This problem is because it's empty, and then you do something else. Which is the last stroke? How to tell? So Truffaut was asked, when is your film finished? Truffaut was completely clear with it. He says, when the money is over. It was completely easy. But the master could not answer that question, you would think. But he did. And what he said was, if you can look at it and say, I did that, then it's finished. The thing is, you have to separate yourself from it in time. It's very difficult, It's like seeing a picture of yourself 5 years later, and you say, did I look like that? Although you have seen yourself every day, you just don't have a memory of it. Because this is about process, not making the product.
Where do you write then, Prakash? Where do you write? Do you write in seclusion or in a... Where do you write?
See, the world is always around. You sit and write, and when you want to do something, everything disappears.
Everything disappears. Wow.
So there's no problem.
I just have that. When I write, I always think, let me get out, go to the mountains, go to the riverside and write, but then, completely unblock everything, block away everything rather. Do you care, Saranya, do you care whether or not your words mean something to anyone, or is writing poetry to you a self-serving exercise? It's your passion, you want to write poetry, or is your poetry, through your poetry you're like sending signals out saying, hey, this is what life, let me be, or who am I, or even pity, perish or conform, all of them who have very clear messages. So is it a self-serving exercise, or is it written to mean something?
Okay, I'd be lying if I say that it's not written for people to read it. The very fact that I've brought a book out is evident that, yes, I want people to read what I've written. Not to come pat my back and say, oh, how wonderfully written, you're such a great writer, no. But to be able to reassure themselves that, hey, here's somebody who's felt what I've felt, here's somebody who's thought what I've thought, here's somebody who's seen what I've seen in the way that I've seen it. Again, it gives you hope. It gives you that feeling that you're not alone in this world. I write because I don't want to be alone. I don't believe in being alone. I write because I want the people who read it, whenever they are, how many ever they are in number, to know that they are not alone.
And you write because you can't help it.
I write because I can't help it, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Ramanan mentions it in his introductory note where he says that, yeah, she writes because she doesn't know any other way. She can't help it.
Is your mind turbulent when you write? I mean, is your poetry, I mean, most poets, they say, have a very turbulent mind. So, is that the same with you too?
Vincent, don't think that any writing, whether it's a poem, a letter, an email, or an SMS that you dash out to your boss on Monday morning because you're going to take leave, everything comes out of some sort of a turbulence in some degree. Yeah, the degree might be great when you're writing something really intense. The degree might be not so great when you're just sending that SMS, you know, and all together.
More with poetry, isn't it? A very turbulent mind is more associated with poetry, and that's when the verses just start flowing.
It has been said before that poetry communicates its meaning before it's understood. It's a very beautiful idea. It's like even good painting. You feel it before you understand it. In fact, somebody can come and explain it and spoil it for you.
Very nice. Ever tried humor in poetry, Saranya? Have you tried humor in poetry? This is your first book, yes. Are you thinking of...
I'd like to think so, because when I wrote Envy, there's this particular line where I was really annoyed with somebody who was extremely demanding. I'd like to believe, yes, humor maybe comes in very subtle ways, but yes.
There is humor, because in Let Me Be, the Saranya Francis, thank you very much. Being purple, you have literally purpled all of us here. I'd like to thank Prakash Belawadi. With all that he's doing, writing, scripting, directing, acting, you know, he still made time to come in. And, ladies and gentlemen, he was here at 5:45, 45 minutes before the program actually started. And Akkai Padmashalli, thank you so much for this wonderful evening, wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, none of us expected our Saturday evening would actually be this memorable and enjoyable. So, bringing a halt to this discussion, I'd also like to thank the moderators, Mr. Narayan and Vincent. We have a small memento for you too. Thank you very much.